Hey guys, what is this? A group of 887 enormous stone heads that have been standing for hundreds of years on Easter Island. What's their story? How did they appear there and who made them? To answer these questions, join us today as we look at the most enigmatic and mysterious statues in the world. Located off the coast of Chile in the southeastern Pacific Ocean, Easter Island is one of the most remote inhabited islands on Earth. This isolated island, covering an area of just 162 square kilometers, has a population of around 7,650 people. It has no rivers or natural harbors, and its highest peak is only 535 meters above sea level. Despite its size, it has 1,000-year-old gigantic stone heads, which are shrouded in mystery. Known as Moai, these monolithic human figures are scattered all over the island and are believed to represent the island's ancestors. They were created by the early Rapa Nui people from red scoria, a type of volcanic rock found only on Easter Island. What makes these statues so special? What is it about them that has captivated scientists, historians, and archaeologists? Well, let's start with their sheer scale. The Moai are truly awe-inspiring. Standing between 3 and 5 meters tall and weighing up to 14 tons, these figures are some of the largest and heaviest freestanding statues on Earth. But they're not just massive, they're also incredibly well crafted. Each statue has distinctive features, including elongated skulls, angular faces, and hands clasped in front of them. These details suggest that the Rapa Nui people put a lot of time and effort into creating these statues. Another thing that makes the Moai so special is the sheer number of them. There are an estimated 887 Moai scattered across Easter Island. Most of them are located along the coast, but others can be found inland. This raises a few questions. Why did the Rapa Nui people make so many statues, and what was their purpose? Unfortunately, we don't know the exact answer to these questions. However, researchers have come up with a few theories based on the available evidence. One theory is that the Moai were meant to represent the island's ancestors. This would explain why they were placed along the coast, as if to welcome the spirits of the dead back to the island. Another theory is that the statues were used as burial markers. Each Moai could represent a particular clan or family, and the graves would have been marked with a large headstone. Still another theory is that the Moai were part of a religious cult. This cult may have worshipped the statues as gods or as representatives of the gods. This would explain why they were given such prominent positions on the island and why there are so many of them. But the Moai are not the only archaeological evidence on Easter Island. There are also a number of ceremonial sites, including one of the finest examples of an ornately carved platform called a village square. These platforms served as the focal point of public life on Easter Island and were used for everything from religious ceremonies to political meetings. Many of the platforms are decorated with petroglyphs, which are ancient drawings or carvings made by indigenous people. The designs can be simple or complex and often depict animals, plants, or human figures. Some researchers believe that the petroglyphs tell stories about the island's history or its connection to other cultures. Others see them as a way to understand the beliefs and values of the Rapa Nui people. However, there are also a number of more controversial structures on the island, such as the famous Ahu Tongariki platform, which contains 15 Moai and is the largest ceremonial site on Easter Island. It was built around 1400 AD during the island's classic period, when the population was at its peak. It is thought that the platform was used for important rituals and ceremonies, such as the inauguration of a new king or the celebration of an important event. It was abandoned around 1680 AD, along with the rest of the island's ceremonial sites. But what led to the decline of this advanced civilization? One popular theory is that the Rapa Nui people destroyed themselves through overpopulation, deforestation, and civil war. According to this theory, the island's limited resources could not sustain its growing population, which led to food shortages and civil unrest. The Rapa Nui people also cut down the island's trees for timber and fuel, which led to soil erosion and a loss of farmland. Eventually, the island descended into chaos, and the great civilization of Rapa Nui came to an end. Another popular theory is that the Rapa Nui people were wiped out by an outside force, such as disease, slavery, or war. When Europeans arrived on Easter Island in the 18th century, they found a small, isolated population living in small villages. The island's rich history and culture were gone, and the Rapa Nui people were no longer the proud and independent people that had once thrived there. Some researchers believe that the Rapa Nui people were wiped out by a smallpox epidemic brought to the island by European sailors. Others believe that they were enslaved or killed by the Spanish conquistadors who were searching for gold and other treasures. However, despite all of these theories, there is still no consensus on what happened to the Rapa Nui people. Their history is shrouded in mystery, and their disappearance is one of the great unsolved puzzles of archaeology. We may never know what happened to them or why their great civilization collapsed. But their story serves as a reminder of the fragility of human civilization and the importance of preserving our cultural heritage. And now let's move on to the next fascinating fact about the Moai. They have been shrouded in mystery since their discovery in 1775 by Europeans. Since then, scientists and historians have been trying to figure out how the Rapa Nui people managed to carve so many huge statues and transport them around the island. The prevailing theory is that the Moai were carved using primitive tools, such as stone axes and chisels. The Rapa Nui people would have cut the stones into shape and then polished them with a rough tool called a pohaku. It would have taken a team of skilled workers several months to complete one Moai. But once the statues were finished, how were they transported around the island? This is where things get really interesting because there is no evidence that the Rapa Nui people used wheels or any other form of advanced technology to move the Moai. Instead, they likely used a technique called rock rolling. This involves placing the statues on logs and rolling them along the ground using ropes. It's a surprisingly effective method that has been used to move large objects without sophisticated technology. But it's not the only theory. Some researchers believe that the Rapa Nui people used a system of levers and pulleys to move the Moai. This would have required a lot of manpower, but it would have been an efficient way to transport the statues over long distances. Regardless of how they were moved, it's clear that the creation and transportation of the Moai was a massive undertaking that required a lot of coordination and effort. But it's not the only impressive feat of engineering on Easter Island. The island is also home to a number of other structures, including the famous Ahu Tongariki platform, which contains 15 Moai and is the largest ceremonial site on the island. It is thought that the platform was used for important rituals and ceremonies, such as the inauguration of a new king or the celebration of an important event. It was built around 1400 AD during the island's classic period, when the population was at its peak. It is abandoned around 1680 AD, along with the rest of the island's ceremonial sites. But how exactly did the Rapa Nui people manage to build these structures? Without metal tools, archaeologists believe that they used a combination of stone tools and wooden hammers to shape the stones. The Rapa Nui people would have quarried the stones and then transported them to the construction site using primitive carts made from wood and vines. Once the stones were in place, they would have been lifted using a system of ramps and levers and then fitted together using a technique called dry masonry. This involves fitting the stones together without using any mortar or adhesive. The Rapa Nui people's ability to build these structures without metal tools is truly remarkable. It shows a high level of engineering skill and ingenuity, and it's a testament to their ability to adapt to their environment and use the resources available to them. If you find these statues fascinating, please like this video. Thanks for watching.